This year I read some books that were really amazing and some books that were maybe not worth the time. So I'm going to go through all the books that I read this year and let you know what was the best book that I read this year and what was the worst book. So if that sounds interesting to you, then stick around. Also, if we haven't met yet, my name is Rachel. I enjoy good stories and I do my best to think well about them. So if that sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and subscribe. I wanted to do kind of just a more laid back and chill and fun video after the video essays that I've been doing, just as a way to reconnect and talk about some good books. So these are all the books that I read this year. Okay, so I started using Fable this year, and I'm going to try to make sure I don't miss anything between Fable and Goodreads, because honestly, I jumped back and forth between both Fable and Goodreads as I was logging my books this year, which is kind of unfortunate because it doesn't give me the best gauge on what I've been reading, but I tried to go through and make sure I had both of them in both places, if that makes sense. So I'll start off at the beginning of the year. I started the year finishing the Throne of Glass series, which is now one of my absolute favorite series. I enjoyed it so much. So I finished Kingdom of Ash in January. This was a great ending to the series. It had all the climactic elements that you would hope for from an epic fantasy series. It had an amazing emotional resolution. It had redemption arcs. It had incredible fight scenes, and just the warfare that was going on was really interesting. So I just really enjoyed this as a way to end the series. I will say it didn't make me as emotional as some of the other books did, but I just felt like it was a really good way to wrap everything up, and it just felt like it all ended with a nice little bow. And just the way that it felt like an ending, but in a way it also felt like the beginning of this new era for the world that we were in. And yeah, I'm really glad that I was able to start the year with such a fun read. Then I moved on to a few books by Abby Jimenez. I read Just for the Summer and Part of Your World, which are both in the Part of Your World series. I guess it's book 1 and book 3. So I'll start with book 1, which is Part of Your World, and this was about a big town doctor who falls in love with this guy from a small farm town, and it was good. I don't think it was much to write home about. I will say what I like about Abby Jimenez is that she doesn't just have the romance, she also has underlying themes, and in this book the underlying theme was attachment styles and how the attachment styles that we develop in early childhood with our parents affects our adult relationships. So she used this book as a way to explore that, and also a way to explore class systems, even within modern day. I think there's different class systems that we experience, and that shapes who you think you can be with or who other people think you can be with. So that was a cool exploration in this book. And then I also read Just for the Summer, and Just for the Summer is about a traveling nurse who basically meets this guy online who thinks he has a curse where every woman he dates goes on to meet the love of her life after she breaks up with him, and the traveling nurse thinks she has kind of the same thing, so they decide to date in order to try and break this curse. So I'm honestly just not a huge romance fan at this point. I don't feel like romance is my genre, so it was a fun read. It was in the middle of winter, so I was I need something summery to just feel, I don't know, to make the darkness, or the darkness, that sounds really intense, but just the gloominess of the weather feel a little bit easier. It was fun, and it is one of the better romance books that I've read. And again, they were kind of exploring how the girl in the story is afraid of this relationship because of just stuff that she's gone through with her mom. So I think adding those familial elements to it and just a deeper internal struggle just makes the romance a lot more interesting. So I really appreciate Abby Jimenez for that. Okay, I'm talking so fast, so I need tea. I'm drinking green tea, by the way. It's the Costco brand. I don't even know what the brand is, but for some reason, this was the tea that my parents always had. I love it. I'll put a picture in. If you need green tea recommendations, here's my green tea recommendation. Anyways, okay, let's get back to it. Then I read Six of Crows, and okay, when I started reading this book, I wanted to love it. I thought I was going to be obsessed with this book because it just sounded like everything that I enjoy in stories. It has a heist. It has a group of outcasts that all come together to fight towards a singular purpose. But for some reason, it just didn't land for me. And I wonder if that's because I wish the book would have aged up the characters a little bit. And I think it's YA, so I understand why they are younger. But knowing that these were like 16, 17-year-old kids breaking into one of the most fortified places in their world just felt really unrealistic to me. It was still a good book. I just think that it wasn't for me. In my reading vlog video, everyone was roasting me for the way that I was rating these books, which is why I'm not giving a rating for these, is because I feel like I don't have like a system for how I rate. So Six of Crows, I feel like the time in which you read a book and the mindset that you're in, the things that are going on in your life is always going to affect the way that you experience the story. So there's going to definitely be some variance there. But I gave it a 3 stars, which I still like. I feel like that is pretty good. I was just hoping that this would be a 5-star read for me. And I went into it with really high expectations. So I think that's why it was a little bit of a disappointment. Next, in February, I read The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. And I'm really mad at myself for taking so long to read this book. Because it was amazing and I couldn't stop thinking about it for months after I read it. Even now, sometimes I'll remember scenes or phrases or just little elements from the book that just stick out to me in new ways. And this is what literature should be. And this is why it is such an acclaimed book. This is why it's a book that everyone talks about. It's not just the plot. This book isn't just a plot that has some interesting characters slapped onto it. No, it is true storytelling in the sense that it brings you into the story. It makes you feel like you're a part of the story. And then it becomes an ongoing conversation in your head between you and the author. You're chewing on the ideas, you're spitting some of them out, you're sending some of them to your heart and your liver, and it just becomes a part of you. That's a weird analogy, but it just like, that's just how reading this book felt. So I'm really glad that I finally got to this book, and if you've been putting it off, you should read it. Okay, and then in May, I read Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez. This is the second book in the Secrets of the Nile series. The first one is What the River Knows. This as a sequel was not bad. I felt like it was just a little bit lacking, where there was a lot of fun with the first book. It was very much an action adventure novel, a little bit in the vein of The Mummy, which was really cool. This book still had a lot of those elements. I just was a little bit disappointed, and maybe coming off of just such a great book like The Picture of Dorian Gray, it just felt a little shallow, but it definitely was a fun palate cleanser. So it's a good book. It was fun. And then after What the River Knows, I read A First Time for Everything by K.L. Walther. She is an author that I really enjoy reading. I've read most of her other books. This book revolves around a girl whose brother is getting married, and she has kind of a strange relationship with her brother's fiance where they don't really get along. They just have some tension. They feel like maybe he's making the wrong choice in marrying her. And our main character is a lacrosse player, and she has a lot of guy friends, and she doesn't really get along with the bridesmaids, even though she's asked to be a bridesmaid in this wedding. All of those elements combined, I think it was fun to see how the bridesmaids wanted our main character to try and find a date for the wedding, and the way it was supposed to be almost like The Bachelor. I thought that was a fun premise, but the way it was executed didn't really focus on the dates or the elements that were marketed as a big part of this book. She did go on a few dates, but that wasn't the main chunk of the book. I felt like the main chunk of the book was her navigating this relationship with our two main guys, and then also trying to figure out her relationship with the fiance, with her brother's fiance, and just her inner dialogue about this girl made her just seem like she wasn't, I guess like the best way to say it is she wasn't a girl's girl, you know what I'm saying? With the bridesmaids, and then also with her brother's fiance. So it just made her kind of unlikable. So it was a little hard to get through. I vlogged this, so if you want to watch or listen to all my thoughts about this book, they're a little bit more fleshed out in that reading vlog. So I'll like put it up here. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy this author. I enjoy the way she uses beautiful settings, and I enjoy kind of her slow burn method of adding romance into these stories. But this one just wasn't my favorite from her. Okay, now we get into the section of the year where I did the reading without the influence of social media video. So I read 3 books for that video challenge. And the first one was The Windsingers by Megan Lindholm. This was a tough one because I jumped into the middle of a series, which, just going off of the book, I think I have it here. I just want to stand up for myself for a second because it does not say on this book that this is the second in a series. I don't think I could have found this. Yeah, okay, so I guess in the front flap it kind of says like the first book in the series. It kind of talks about the Kai and Vandian quartet. And the first one is Harpy's Flight, and this would be the second book. But it wasn't very clear when I picked it up that this was a second book. And by then I had already chosen all my books. I went to the thrift store and got this book, and it did sound interesting to me, and it didn't make it seem like it was a second book in the series. But anyways, even jumping into it, not knowing anything about it, I still enjoyed it. I just think it was really tough to get into, which makes sense. Seeing as how it is not the first book in the series, we should already know these characters. We should already be connected with them. But I think I can say pretty objectively, even without that prior knowledge from the first book, I think I can still say that there were some odd elements in this book. The main characters that were seemingly in some sort of like romantic relationship were not together for like 90% of the book. So they hardly interacted, and they went on these very separate and strange adventures that I just felt like they didn't tie together very well at the end. So I think I can say that even having not read the first book of the series. But I am very excited to read more books from Megan Lindholm. I think this one just wasn't the best introduction to her as an author. So I will read more of her books. But yeah, this one was just a tough one for me. Another book that I read as a part of that video was The Thorns Remain by J.J.A. Harwood. And this book was not my favorite. I also had really high expectations for this book. So I was just really disappointed when it felt too tropey. It just felt too much like every other romantasy book. It's about a girl who lives in the Scottish Highlands, and all of her friends go missing after a night of dancing in the woods. They're captured by fairies, and she has to basically bargain with the fairy king to get them back. And he asks her to do all these crazy tasks, and then she gets them back one by one, but they're not the same. So this book, I think I was enjoying it up until the point where the fairy king got really sleazy, but it felt like he was supposed to be the romantic interest. And then I just felt gross reading it, honestly. So then I stopped and I DNF'd it. Okay, now getting into the fall and ending off the year, I read some of my absolute new favorite books this fall, and I'm so grateful and excited. The first one of these was Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This book had every single element that a fantasy book should have. It had a really interesting and flawed main character who made some really impulsive decisions and did not want to be the hero of this story, but he was forced into it. And I just absolutely love it when that happens in books, in the sense that we had our reluctant hero. But I think what was really cool about this hero, this main character, is he was open to true wisdom, to wisdom coming from people that he respected, and he allowed that to shape him. So it was just a really cool dynamic, just so well written and really enjoyable. And it's just so interesting because this amazing main character that the book is centered around lives in just a strange society where there's different colors for the different castes, and they're populating Mars, and it's just this weird futuristic sci-fi fantasy world, and it's so interesting. And Pierce Brown just does such a wonderful job of world building to where it feels really immersive. The only thing that I would critique about the world building is that when we are in the games that is created by this school, it's like a military school that basically has games for the students to play in order to have sort of a real world experience learning about war and leadership. When they are in that game where it's basically a live action role play of war, we kind of forget that we're on Mars. We don't get to use as many interesting elements as we did at the beginning of the book. It's still very fascinating because we get to see the dynamics between the different characters when everything else is stripped away. Makes for a very interesting story, and I cannot wait to read the rest of the series. I wanted to put all of my Brandon Sanderson books together. I say all of them. It was only 2 this year. Unfortunately, I would love to read more, and I'm currently reading The Well of Ascension. And now I'm going to round off this whole book section with the 2 Brandon Sanderson books that I read this year, which are Tress of the Emerald Sea and the first Mistborn book. My Brandon Sanderson journey, so to speak, began at the beginning of this year when I watched all of his lecture videos on writing on YouTube. And I just absolutely loved the way that he thinks about story and just how witty and silly but serious he is about it. And you can just tell that he's really passionate about the craft. So, having watched those, I decided to take a crack at probably the worst book I could have started with by Brandon Sanderson, which is The Way of Kings. Although now that I think about it, I did actually read his Reckoners series back in 2018, which is a YA series that is basically the opposite of superheroes. It's like the superheroes in this world are bad. But anyway, so I read those like way back when. But honestly, I feel like this is a different category. Reading his adult books just feels like a different category. So I tried to read The Way of Kings in like March. I got like halfway, no, not even, I got like probably 3 or 4 hours into the audiobook, and I was like, you know what? I think I need to try something else first. So then I went and read Tress of the Emerald Sea. Absolutely love that book. This is a story inspired kind of by the tone of The Princess Bride, where Tress, who lives on this rock island, nothing exciting happens. She falls in love with the Duke's son, and the Duke's son is then captured by the evil sorceress who lives on the Crimson Sea, and the only way to get him back is by paying a ransom, and the king refuses to pay that ransom. So Tress decides that she's gonna go save her love, Charlie, and she embarks on this epic adventure. It is so fun, and all of the side characters are just whimsical and silly, and there's a lot of like shocking moments. It definitely feels adult. It doesn't feel like a YA book. It has all like the whimsy and fun of stories like The Princess Bride, but just done in a way that feels like Pirates of the Caribbean. It feels like those early like action adventure novels, and it's just so sweet. And I just love Tress as a character. She's scared, but she's willing to do things scared. She's willing to try new things. And she's just a wonderful and fun character. And yeah, it was a great read. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about in this video, just to wrap it all up and wrap up this little mini Brandon Sanderson promo, is Mistborn, the first book in the Mistborn series. I also read this earlier this year, and I just absolutely love it. So this book is about a group of thieves that are planning this seemingly impossible heist against the actual ruler of this dark fantasy world. In this world, ash falls from the sky, plants do not grow green, the sun is red. It is like everything bad that could happen to a world. The bad guys have won, but this group of thieves is determined to change that. So it's just a really fun heist story, but the characters have so much heart, and there's almost a found family theme as well, and a romance subplot, which I think is fun. So yeah, I just really enjoyed this story. I loved the main characters. I loved Kelsier. I loved Vin. And yeah, just really enjoyed this. I'm currently reading the second book in the series, so I'm just excited to continue on. Okay, so that's all the books that I read this year. It's definitely not as many as I have read in previous years, but I am not going to read books that I don't want to read because I feel pressure to from the internet. That's just not going to happen. And then also I wanted to focus on really trying to work through some larger pieces of work. I'm currently reading The Woman in White. I'm currently reading Jane Eyre. So I'm trying to work through books that I have had goals of reading for a while rather than just reading quick books to hit an arbitrary number. So that's kind of why it's a little bit less. And I don't even know why I'm explaining myself. I don't need to explain that to you. But so if you feel pressure to read a lot of books, my encouragement to you would be focus on the books that you really care about and that will really impact you rather than a certain number that you're able to say at the end of the year. With all of that being said, okay, I'm gonna rank the best book this year and the worst book this year. I feel like I have to say, even though I absolutely love The Picture of Dorian Gray, that's probably way up there in my list for this year, I have to say my favorite, just in all categories was Mistborn. Yeah, it just takes the cake. It was really fun. I enjoyed it. It's everything that I enjoy in a book, and I'm so glad that I was able to read that book this year. The worst book that I read this year, naturally, I just feel like it is The Thorns Remain, because I didn't even finish it. I just can't do the tropey, weird romance stuff. All right, so that's all of the books. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and comment below what your favorite book was that you read this year so I can go and check it out. Let me know if you want more just sit down fun videos like this. I've been having a good time with the video essays, just trying to like figure out the direction of this channel. So your comments are super helpful to me. Either way, I hope you have a very happy new year, and thanks so much for being here. I will see you next time.